Welcome back to This Week. Time now to get the views of our media and political experts. Bob Tuke is the former head of the Tennessee Democratic Party and a candidate for the United States Senate. Steve Gill, syndicated talk show host. Both of you guys, welcome. Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Busy week this week for the Tea Party, folks. Busy week for you, several different events. The crowds will maybe a little smaller this year, but when you look at new polls out, 16% of voters identify themselves as supportive of this organization. While it may sound small for a year-old organization, that is a huge number.
Well, I think one of the things you had last year was you had kind of a lot of issues. You had the first time, the fervor of it, and I think you're seeing actually as an organization matures, as Bob will tell you, and most of the times if you can draw 1,000 people to a political rally, you're pretty doggone happy. Sure. And just in the last couple of days, we saw 1,000 in Mount Juliet, 1,000 in Lebanon, 1,000 downtown. So you're seeing what would be standardized as great political numbers if you didn't have 10,000 last year.
And it's, I have to say, I think it's great for America. I probably some of my Democratic friends certainly wouldn't agree with me, but anytime that people get out, it's good for America. That is what we're about. I'm glad to see it. Of course, I don't agree with most of the stuff that they happen to agree with, but debate about things like that is really good. And unless you get people out there like you got them out there, the debate isn't heard, and it needs to be heard.
As this movement moves forward, it seems it's pretty clear what they oppose. What's unclear is there a uniform message about what they support. This seems to be where the dichotomy is. That there are some things, obviously, they do say they support, but the messages come from different angles.
Well, I think the main thing is a constitutional approach to how we govern. Let's go back to the rule book. Let's look what the founders intended. Let's what the founders wrote in the Constitution. And we've added layer after layer after layer of bureaucracy since that time. I talked to somebody the other day, and I said, look, before we can start mantling and going back to, to what we're, or dismantling and taking some of this stuff back, we got to stop putting more stuff on. So we got to stop mantling before we start dismantling. And I know that a lot of their arguments are that we've got to pull this back and pull this back. Let's just stop growing first, and then we'll figure out what to do next.
They really have a tension in the movement because the question is, are they going to become another party, a third party, or is it a grassroots opportunity for people who believe in the things that Steve just said to be heard and to have an influence? So as an organization, if it's well organized but not with a key leader identified, perhaps they can influence mostly the Republican Party, but not only the Republican Party, as a movement versus being a third party. So the tension is there, I know, as I've talked to some of the folks involved with it, and it's really interesting to see which direction they decide to go because they can't do both.
And I think, frankly, they ought to avoid the push to become a third party. I think when you look at Europe, you look at other countries where you have such a fractured division of parties. In America, really traditionally, we've really been a two-party system from the outset. And when you look at other countries that have kind of gone to this fractured, let's put together a coalition government, it really hasn't worked particularly well. And our tradition has been a two-party system. I think what you'll end up seeing is the Tea Party will, as Bob said, influence the Republican Party, maybe pull some disaffected conservative Democrats and independents over and change the Republican Party from within. Or if the Republican Party fails to change, then I think you'll see a third-party movement.
If there's three parties, though, it looks like it would hurt the Republicans as they try to take back Congress.
I think so, but I think that what that would do is lead towards a shattering of all the parties. I think you'd start seeing, a liberal wing of the Democratic Party, a green wing of the Democratic Party, a conservative. I think you'd see a lot of this piecing out that would make the political process probably even more chaotic.
And from the Democratic perspective, they'd love for third-party candidates to be sent up there.
Of course, and also you have to remember the possibility that sometimes what happens if people become disaffected, they simply start staying home. And you remember back in the 60s and 70s, that happened to the Democrats. Extremely liberal Democrats just got sick of the whole system and just stayed out of it. And so that's one of the other possibilities, which is why I think they need to really focus on continuing to be heard, to continue to be that grassroots movement and try to have influence on the Republican Party versus becoming a third party.
The other thing I'd add is that the pendulum swing of I don't like what they're doing on that side, so I'm with you, swings back and forth. I mean, one of the reasons Barack Obama and the Democrats got in, people were disaffected with Bush and the Republicans. That didn't mean they were for what Barack Obama and the Democrats were for, and as they've realized what they're for, they're swinging back away. So I think both parties are held accountable by this whole process, and that's a good thing.
International story happened here in Tennessee last week and this week with the return of an adopted child to Russia from a mother in Shelbyville. Really unusual story. We don't know all the details yet, but the basic is the woman said the child was violent, she couldn't control him, and was not informed of this information, and basically sent the child back. And you're very involved with adoption, so it's good.
We don't, you're correct, we don't know all the facts, but here's what we do know. The child was placed through a very reputable agency that's been doing adoptions from Russia for many years. Many children from Russia, from Russian orphanages, have attachment disorders. That's just the way it is. And many children from other institutional places, not just Russia, also have those circumstances. It appears that what happened is that child has some of those attachment issues. It appears also that the birth mom, the adoptive mother, single mom, registered nurse, did not avail herself of the many resources that are available here in Tennessee
to deal with this.
To deal with it, including at Vanderbilt. The Children's Hospital has a special unit that deals with kids from other lands who are having problems adjusting in America. There are agencies that deal specifically with that, and professionals in Tennessee that deal specifically with, and elsewhere in the country as well. And finally, the Department of Children's Services has professionals who are able to deal with that, and we all wish that she had turned to that kind of professional help rather than simply putting a child on an airplane to Moscow. That is not acceptable under any circumstance.
Well, I think we can all agree that hopefully this will not hurt the adoptive process. There are families
That's
here in
the
Tennessee
question,
that
right.
desperately want children and can't have them, and whether they adopt from China or Russia or from orphanages and facilities here in Tennessee, hopefully this story won't diminish the love of people going out to adopt and care for a child because they're then concerned that this is going to happen. So I think it's real important for everybody to kind of take a breath and say, hey, look, this is an isolated story. Be careful, follow the rules, listen to what Bob said. But don't say let's back away from adoption.
It's really good that the United States at the highest level has sent a delegation to meet with the Ministry of Education in Russia to make sure that they don't suspend adoptions from Russia because of this one, as Steve says, this one singular incident.
We got to wrap. Bob Tuke, Steve Gill, appreciate your insight very much. Stay with us. This week continues in a moment.